Hi everyone, this is Robyn from Oh, the Audacity of Her, Unhinged and Unfiltered. Today I am going to talk about energy. When I'm talking about energy, I mean a few different things. I mean capacity for energy, boundaries, and balance. When I talk about this, part of it is because it is something that is a continuous battle for me, because I like to do a lot of things and I like to help people, and I often struggle with people pleasing, which I know I talked about in the RSD episode, but I struggle with people pleasing because I think that there's this thing where sometimes if you have like certain skills or gifts that are like people notice in you, for example, like me connecting with people, like I'm usually quite good at that, usually, and it can be hard because I have quite a few like skills around like conflict resolution, kind of when I'm able to like channel into the kind of ayahuasca side of me, the like knowing my gifts, knowing what to say, like just intuitively. If I think I can help somebody, or if I feel like I'm like maybe listening to somebody, listening to a friend who's going through something, it can be really hard to like, I don't know, I don't want to say keep that back, because it's not like I'm keeping it back necessarily. It's just that not everyone's ready for that at that time, right? Like sometimes people just want to be heard, or they just want to complain about something, and that's okay. They want to vent. And so, but just being the person that I am, I don't want to say I'm a fixer. There's definitely like a part of me that, you know, would love to just like fix things, but I actually believe that like lots of things, there isn't necessarily a fix. It's more of like a, oh, well, like this could be done this way, or like, you know, I think that there's multiple ways of looking at things, and sometimes like it's not as easy as a simple fix. It might be like a process or sitting with things, but I've realized that like just because I have skills in something doesn't mean that I need to take something on. And that has been a really big learning and journey for me recently, because I've often wondered, you know, I get stuck in that cycle of, you know, oh, I'm going to slow my life down. I'm going to like, you know, do this, do that. And then I'm doing less. And like, yeah, it might be less, but if it's not things that align with like that heart work that I'm doing, if it's really head heavy, which I mean, we all have to do stuff in life that doesn't, like, I don't know, I like don't love doing laundry, but like I still have to fold the laundry even though, and put it away. I mean, I have a wonderful partner who is like very supportive, and we work really well together with laundry and with chores, because there's certain things that take more brain energy for people, right? And yeah, we just like work off of each other's strengths. And so mine is not laundry. So anyways, yeah, there's just, there are certain like situations or certain people that sometimes can be especially difficult for you. And I'm recognizing that. Or, yeah, situations, not necessarily people, but maybe even topics, the way of doing something can be really draining. And having ADHD, like we sometimes, or for me anyways, I can get really drained by energy, and by like having to do something a certain way or having to mask again. It can just be super exhausting, which I think is really hard to explain sometimes when, it's not necessarily about the person you're with or like that, even the activity that you're doing. It can just be like, yeah, just something that's this extra, like you have to kind of save face, or you have to kind of be on, right? And so when I kind of like reflect on like, what are the things that make me really exhausted or really like dysregulated, it is sometimes those things. And I think a lot of people feel that, and we hear it a lot around the holidays because people have to be around like family and like, maybe extended family that they don't see all the time, or siblings or parents that can be hard for them. And we feel this like obligation, but then we're like left more drained than before. And like, instead of people talking about kind of what it is, often people just kind of like, well, that's just part of life, right? Like, we just have to kind of deal with it. And sometimes we do. There are certain things that we do need to do that. But there are sometimes ways that we can do things that kind of align with us more, or maybe like be mindful of that energy. Like maybe having some kind of like, I don't know, code, or like check in with a partner, with like a friend, whatever, around like, what, I need a bit of a break from this social situation or this whatever. I'm gonna go grab something at the store, or I'm just gonna go lay down and have a rest, or whatever it is that, like, if you need to go on your phone and to kind of disassociate for a bit. But being mindful of those things is so important. And one of my visions that I had in my last ayahuasca ceremony was so fascinating to me, because it was a lot about this, because I get in my head sometimes around what, like, I love these people who are in my life but I sometimes like, yeah, just find that there's certain situations that are harder for me. And no matter what, like, I want people in my life, and it's people in every like part of my life too, that I just sometimes get more drained around, and I don't necessarily know what it is. And it's not that I don't want to spend more time with them or spend time with them at all. It's not that. I mean, part of it is I don't have time. I don't have enough time right now to spend with anybody. That's not true. I make time, but I am working really hard on slowing down and spending time with people, but also spending time with myself. And that's what I'm really like kind of selfishly doing a lot more of right now. And not selfishly. I need to reconnect. I need to ground. I need to ground. That is what it is. I need to grind. I need to ground. Yeah. I needed time to process and to ground myself in ways that feel really good for me. And I feel, and I get a lot of guilt around a lot of these pieces, because I feel like I'm often the only one, which I'm not the only one, but I can feel that way sometimes. That is kind of like saying like, hey, I'm not doing well. Like, I need a break, or I need to just kind of focus on my stuff right now because I'm feeling so overwhelmed, or I'm feeling whatever. Sad, I'm feeling like my grandma just passed, and I needed that time to heal. And I'm still taking that time to heal. And it's really interesting because this weekend I spent a lot of time kind of trying to do things for me that are, catching up on projects and catching up on work, but also doing a bit of what I need to do to take care of myself. And yeah, I feel like my grandma gave me signs this weekend, so that was pretty cool. Including like a beautiful sunset today. But it can be hard when we're kind of in a world that doesn't say what they mean, or doesn't. And I mean, people do, individuals do, but I think it's not necessarily like, it wasn't valued for a long time. It was like, oh, certain people's opinions, certain people's voices matter. But if you're not one of those people, then, maybe you shouldn't really speak up. And like, this is not my vibe, if I'm being honest. And it's never been my vibe. For a long time, I shut up. And I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't want to be quiet. I don't want to not say my truth. And it's hard because I've lost people in my life that I really love and I really care about. But I have to also trust that, like, even doing this, like having my life, my feelings, everything so out in the open is hard. Like, it's a lot for people, and I understand that. And but I do really feel it's what I need right now. And I think that yeah, it's the right thing for me. And I think that everybody needs different things, right? And we're at different parts of our own journeys. And I realized in that ayahuasca vision that I like putting up boundaries and having kind of people at different parts of our life and allowing them in different ways, and deciding kind of like with that energy, like how much you can kind of put in. And either like, because there's a few things, I think some of it is the reciprocity. Like, are you getting as much as you're giving, or are you giving as much as you're getting? Because that can be equally as hard when you kind of realize, like, ooh, I'm not holding up my part of this. And then, all the guilt and the feelings that come with that. But then also part of it can be allowing yourself to have boundaries in situations or with people that don't make you feel great. Like, if they might not be doing it intentionally at all. It just might be a situation of, yeah, like, this is just something, there's something that's right now in my life, it's not what's working for me, but I still love them, and I don't want, our relationship to change. Excuse me. It's just that I don't have the capacity right now. And that's okay too. They maybe will, like, in your mind, kind of step back. And I'm actually working on a model for this too, that I will release at some point when I, things just like come to me, typical ADHD fashion, where they come to me and then I'm like, yes, this is my moment to run with this. So when that happens, then, I'll release it. But the model basically is to look at those different energy levels and the ability to, have people in your life, in your space, in your on your journey, and but also be able to, be like, okay, like maybe they're not ready for this part of my life at this point, or maybe, they are not okay with this aspect of my life. And like, sometimes it's just certain things we don't talk about with certain people, depending on the right situation, the relationship. And I don't keep things from people. It's not necessarily that. It's more that if I know that this is something that's really hard for somebody, and especially if they are either just not supportive of something, or, it's against their values or their morals, or they just, have different life experiences, whatever. There's so many reasons. It's okay to, or I think it's okay to, sit with that and look at that and be like, okay, and kind of analyze that. Like, okay, like, and, am I personalizing it? Like, I try to look at kind of all the layers too of all the stuff I have going on. Like, where is this feeling coming from? Sitting with those feelings. And so often it's more of kind of, my own thing, and me being like, okay, I need to take a bit of a step back, because I'm maybe making the situation a little bit more complex than it needs to be, or I'm feeling rejected and that's why this feels worse for me. Or is it that, okay, that's just something we don't agree with on that area, and so like I can love somebody and have boundaries in that, where maybe like phone conversations are best with us for us, but texting isn't. Or maybe like I'm only gonna see them with certain people, because I never know kind of how I'm gonna feel. I want to be with somebody where I can check in, or I can, if it's a social situation, maybe I can kind of exit, or like have a plan to dip out early if I need to. Like, there's just so many pieces of like, kind of like managing that energy, or making sure that like, okay, the next day if I have like a really intense meeting or intense like client or whatever it may be, how can I take care of myself in, the after that. And there's just so many ways of having people in your life, and showing them that you love them, and telling them that you love them, and making sure that you are nurturing that relationship, but that it still does feel good for you. Because I've realized that there were definitely relationships that I've had in my life. And when I talk about relationships, like, I mean all types of relationships. I don't mean, I think a lot of people think when I say relationship, I mean like romantic relationships, but that's not like necessarily what I mean. I mean, even like, workplaces, community things that you do, friends, family. There's so many times that like we do have to be around people. But I had this like weird thing where back in the day I used to talk the most at social things to people I didn't really want to talk to. And I was like, why do I do that? That's like I could have talked to all the people I wanted to talk to. Why am I spending all my time here? And like I really had to sit with that, and like, what is it about that? And like, am I trying to make up for something? Like, do I feel, I don't know. And so then I realized like I'd be so tired after social things. I'm like, of course I am, because I just like not tortured myself, but energy wise, that's a freaking lot. So it's sometimes okay to sit with that and think about it and be like, hey, maybe somebody does need to be out of your life. Maybe. And I'm not here to tell anyone any of that. But maybe there is a way to love somebody and to have them in your life that is a way that feels good for you, almost like a negotiated way, that you won't feel shitty, that you like about your decision to, I don't know, maybe like end the relationship, or like, you know, move or go to a different workplace or whatever it may be, a transfer to another department, or just kind of like ghosting somebody even. And it might be an uncomfortable conversation, or just even uncomfortable for a little bit around the transition of being like, you know, I just need to take a bit of space for myself, or I just need to focus on my own stuff for a bit, which is hard. And communication is hard, but acknowledging when we make mistakes too, and acknowledging when we are going through either a hard time or we just need to focus on our stuff, and you know, maybe we've been putting stuff off that we have to do, and then you have to catch up. You know, I'm a very firm believer in honesty, and you know, I over explain myself all the time. I definitely have that part of ADHD where, as if you can't tell, where, you know, I'm very wordy, and but I also am very aware of that. And like, for me, if I hold back, then I perseverate on it. I get hyper focused. I'm like, oh, like I still doesn't feel resolved for me. And you know what, sometimes things can't be resolved, and I need to focus on that, and I need to work on that, where, you know, maybe my energy was too much for somebody, or maybe they had to kind of take a step back. And you know, that, yes, like part of that's about me, but at the same time, that's them taking care of themselves, and I'm proud of people for that, for taking care of themselves, because I mean, I'm a lot, like, and I'm also an only child. Like, I like a lot of attention, and and so but I also, I know I'm like a really good friend and a good like person to have. Like, people do value having me in their life, like not everybody, but some people, and I'm confident with that. And so I know it's not necessarily me, but it's hard to not feel that way sometimes. And that's where kind of starting to set more those boundaries and those expectations with people, but also recognizing that like it is healthy that people are setting their own boundaries too, and like things change, people's energy can change, their capacity can change depending on their life and how that, you know, what's going on for them. And it is like, as much as sometimes it hurts that I can't see somebody as much, or like maybe, you know, they just don't have the really capacity for me in that moment, no matter how much I want to see them, it isn't healthy for it to just be one person's choice, right? And I'm all about like conflict resolution, and I'm all about communication and navigating, like really relationship navigating. And so it is a bit of a like working together to navigate how that needs to be communicated, but also so everybody feels seen and feels heard in conversations, because it's so much easier to shut down and pull away. And I think that's why, you know, I support people who are, or I'm like doing some relationship navigation as part of my my new role, and like, or the business that I'm opening. And it's something I see a lot of is like ghosting. And you know, it's so much easier to just not say goodbye, right? And that's not always because somebody's not interested. They might be too interested, or they might be scared, or they might just not be ready at that point. And that is also, you know, can be okay. And so, you know, and I'm not saying people should ghost people, because like I feel like, you know, it's really hard sometimes for people not have closure, and especially if somebody like, you know, I've heard from people that have been talking to people for a long time, and then they just, yeah, kind of go away and they don't know what happened, and that you can't get closure from that, right? And some people really need that. And so I think as much as it can be hard to have those conversations, it's important to sometimes lean into that uncomfortable, lean into that, like, okay, as awkward as it's going to be, I need to have this hard conversation, and doing it with the most like empathy that you can and dignity that you can, and because yeah, it like making sure that people feel that they understand too, so that they can move on, and or not, or that they can process kind of what's going through. If it's not that it's not always exiting relationships either, like, or exiting a friendship. I would say, like, I don't want to say, I don't have any stats, I'm not a stats person, but like, it's not always leaving a situation. It can just be like, hey, I need to take a step back, or this is just like, our friendship needs are not meeting right now, or our relationships needs are kind of not aligning, and I just have to figure out how I'm going to navigate that, if I'm going to stay in this person's life or whatever it is. And yeah, and then just, you know, looking at yourself too, like, okay, well, how does that feel for me? And like, that is a process of being a part of a relationship of any type, because really friendships too, family relationships, all of it, we all play a part, we all have a role, and we all like, there's a give and take. It's a bit of a dance of like navigating that, and a compromise, and you know, both people should feel good, or all people should feel good. There might be situations that are hard, for sure, and I mean, life is hard, relationships are hard, but that respect piece too, of like, okay, no, I respect them, I want them to know that I value them in my life. And that's a really big piece too, is making sure that people feel valued. We want them to feel like, I know I want people to feel like they matter to me, because they do. If they're in my life, they matter to me. I mean, I always joke I'm a people collector, just because like, I like meet people and I just like love people, and I'm like, yeah, I love them, like they're so awesome. And everywhere I go, I'm like, not everywhere I go, but go places and I meet new people and I make friends, and I'm like, oh, I still keep in touch with them, blah blah blah. And people are like, that is so weird, but I love people, like, and I love that, and I love connections, but you know, I also have to be mindful of my own energy, and be mindful of how other people, like, you know, sometimes, like, because I've met a lot of people traveling and stuff, like, sometimes people don't want a friend that they met traveling, that they're like, I can have them on Instagram, but I don't really want to keep in contact. Like, it might be too much for people, and that's okay. Like, and I've realized that too. I used to get so butthurt, be like, oh, they don't care. But then I'm like, no, it is at my capacity, often, depending on the energy, depending on the situation, depending on what I'm doing in my life, or at that point, can be very like, yeah, at first I could be like, oh, they don't like me, we didn't have that good of a like connection or whatever, like, they told me about their life, how dare they? And then it's not always that. I have to be mindful of their capacity too, and that maybe they're introverted. Maybe for them that's just too much, and that's okay. So it's saying all of this energy, and really looking at how relationships, how people in our lives make us feel. Do we feel energized when we go, what or who in our life are those, or is that emotional vampire? What are the situations that you're like, oh man, like I better take a day off after this, or I better make sure that, I'm able to rest for a few days, because we all have things in our lives that do that. I think to a certain capacity, most people probably have some people in their life that have that. But how can we navigate it? And what can we do about it to make sure that we are keeping our energy for things that fuel us? So thank you for listening. I am really excited that you are still here. And yes, please continue to follow me, subscribe. The audacity of her on Instagram and on YouTube now. And I have a Patreon. And yeah, you're probably either listening to me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. But thank you. I'm so grateful for you all. Talk soon.